What's up, guys? It's Emily back again. Your Coven leader, Emily, joined the Batgirl Coven. I'm so out of rhythm now. This is the Azura Media Club. Welcome to that. We're doing Scott Pilgrim takes off the anime, which has the same voice cast from the movie. Um, which I don't know if at this point I will have reviewed or not. But I did watch the show again. I just watched the movie again a couple nights ago with my brother, and that was really good still. I'm still reading back through the books. I did the first two volumes already, obviously, but it's really interesting because this show, I'd heard a lot of things about it from before I had seen it. My friend Jameson talked about it like a lot, but he would always be very cautious about spoilers and stuff. And I remember him asking him specifically about, the line where Matthew Patel's like, um, where Scott asks Matthew Patel, "Are you a pirate?" And so it's interesting because in the books he says pirates aren't in this year, and then in the movie he actually says pirates are in this year, or vice versa. One of those, has the opposite line. So I wondered. I asked Jameson, "Hey, what is it in the show? Is it pirates aren't or are in this year, or do they do something different with it?" And he's like, "Well, I don't think the line is even in there." And that's what really got me shocked. Is like, really? And then I asked him about a different line. I think it was like a Lucas Lee line or something, and he's like, "Yeah, that's not in there either," or something. And I'm like, "Huh, that's really interesting." So from what I understood, because there was very little kind of said about this beforehand, which was probably for the best, I thought that this was going to be yet another adaptation of Scott Pilgrim, but in anime form, so we could take elements from the books that got cut for the movie and expand on part of those. To my surprise, it's actually, spoilers by the way, it's actually completely different than both. And it actually in a meta way, it makes fun of the movie, the books, all of that. There's like a script that actually is, it's Scott from the future. Actually, it's Ramona from the future sends back this script of Scott's life. The Scott from the future who kidnaps the Scott from today. And so we think that Scott from today actually lost the fight against Matthew Patel. But it actually turns out it's just like a more meta thing than that. But anyway, Ramona in the future writes Scott Pilgrim the movie and sends it back to get made as a movie, and then young Neil like has this, and so he's trying to make this into a movie, and that's like 2 episodes of the show. What's interesting about this show is that each episode kind of focuses on an evil X. So episode 2 is Matthew Patel. Episode 1 is basically just I would say this first volume of Scott Pilgrim, up until they start fighting or whatever, and then Matthew Patel wins against Scott Pilgrim. But what happens is future Scott actually just comes and takes him back into a portal to take him to the future to show him like that things got messed up or something with him and Ramona. And it turns out to just be a misunderstanding because like she just wanted some space for a little bit, but he took it as like they broke up. So he's like, don't even date Ramona, don't marry Ramona, don't do anything with Ramona, don't fight the evil exes. Basically, that was kind of his whole stance on the situation. So he goes back in time. He invents time travel with the Katiyanagi twins, who's apparently tight with now, who get really severely underplayed in the movie. By the way, I really like them in the books. I like their little robot in the show because it actually is recording moments to show Scott like what he missed or whatever, and how much effort Ramona was making. And I actually like that too. Ramona's actually kind of the main character of Scott Pilgrim Takes Off because she's searching for Scott like most episodes, and so it's more about his friends and the evil exes, which is really interesting. Yeah, so like each episode kind of revolves around the evil X, and it gets a little fillery, like episode 4, episode 5-ish, with this whole movie set thing. That really like kind of derails the thing, and you don't really start to get back on track till like episode 6 and 7 and 8. There's only 8 episodes, by the way. And they're like 30-minute episodes, like legitimately 30-minute episodes, not like 23-minute episodes or whatever, with commercial breaks or whatnot. But also, it's a Netflix show, so like Ramona works for Netflix now, which is funny. But yeah, I don't know. There's little funny things like that. She doesn't even work for Amazon anymore. She works for Netflix now, like delivering the physical DVDs. So what's funny is he orders Lucas Lee movies because Wallace tells him to, which you think is like going to be a setup for the whole Lucas Lee thing in the movies, like that Wallace is watching, and like the second part of the Evil X thing in the movie, book, etc. in the main canon of Scott Pilgrim there. But it goes a whole completely different direction, and I know that like a lot of people are kind of didn't like that as much. There was, like I said, like episode 4 and 5 kind of feel like fillery episodes, and that's kind of where it derails a little bit for myself, for just a little bit, and it gets right back on track with the main plot. I like how we're looking into the Evil X's more, though. I like that, that we get to see from their perspective. They become more of characters, and by the end, it's actually really interesting because he actually like thinks he has to go and fight the Evil X's because he has like this barrier that he can't kiss Ramona with. It turns out it's nanomachines, by the way, from the future, from even older Scott from the future. And also, basically, even older Scott from the future is like, if you think about it, he's kind of Nega Scott, in a sense. Like, the older Scott from the future is actually just Nega Scott. Which is cool, because then we're actually kind of exploring Nega Scott, which they did a little bit in the books, too. The other thing that I really liked is that they included Knives more. Like, she actually got to be the keyboard player for Sex Bomb at the end there, when, like, like, in the movie, young Neil, like, steps up and takes the position on, but he actually, like, does his own thing in this. And then, so, like, Knives steps up as this keyboard player, and then, like, Scott's still in the band playing bass and stuff, and they have a little nice moment at the end there. I like the quote-unquote breakup in this a lot more, because like it even seems like they weren't really dating per se, and they kind of touch on that in the movie and the books, but it's like very explicit that he's like dating this 17-year-old. The movie even starts with like, somewhere in Toronto, Canada, Scott Pilgrim was dating a high schooler. And it's like, the whole first part is about him dating this high schooler. It's kind of weird, And I know that's the vibe that they're going for, but I don't know if they really portray that much in the movie. Also in the movie, like, Michael Cera, like, I didn't really try to focus on it that much more, but when you kind of notice it, it kind of, like, oh, that is kind of a thing. He, like, kind of takes over the role a little bit more. It's a little bit less Scott. And I feel like the movie was kind of actually written more around that, around, like, Michael Cera and stuff, because if you watch the show, Ramona is actually very interested in Scott kind of from the get-go. They have, like, this one date, and it never really gets anywhere, but she still is trying to go after him a lot. And in the books, it's a very similar thing. There's obvious chemistry there, obvious romance there. In the movie, it's kind of there, but it's a little bit more like she's very apprehensive about this whole relationship. She's like, this guy's kind of a creeper, but I'm just going to go with it, kind of thing, which is, it's odd, it just doesn't feel completely organic to the books. And I think the show actually kind of nailed that a little bit more, is that, because a relationship is a two-sided thing, and so, not that she didn't like him in the movie, but it feels weird and kind of stilted in the movie in terms of, like, he's a little bit more of an asshole sometimes and stuff. Scott, he's just kind of a lovable goof, and he is that in the movie as well, but here I am comparing all three of them again. But anyway, I just like how they portrayed Scott and Ramona in this, and oh, I love the art style too. I mean, it's right out of the books, but it, like, has its own unique flair to it too. I love Ramona's, like, outfits throughout it. I love how every episode there's the gag of her, like, having to change her hair color. That's pretty funny, but, and she, like, finally dyes it to, like, blonde at the end, It's like the girl in the book, like, what's her face? I can never remember her name. Anyway, yeah. So, it's a good, interesting take on it. Oh, I was getting to the final episode where he thinks he has to go and fight the evil X's, um, but he doesn't actually have to go and fight them because he goes to like fight them, and he's like, "You're the one who put this nanomachine thing on me," and they're like, "Nah, dog, we're good." Like all of them are like good with Scott, and they're all happy and doing their own thing, and it's really nice to see that, in the movie and in the book even. I think they just kind of get headbutted into oblivion, like Todd does anyway. But here they actually get to become characters, and they live their own little lives, and they all have happy little epilogues. Like I love there's a scene in the epilogue there where I just want to call her Mae Whitman, but I can't think of her name. Roxy and Todd, like, they're both gay now. Like, she was gay in the thing, and then Todd, they made him gay now with, like, Wallace Wells, which I thought was really interesting, and that was probably the better aspects of episode 4, but other than that, it just kind of felt like more filler. That was kind of the problem with that. But the gay stuff was good. I like that. I thought that was interesting, but Wallace wasn't interested, and then he, like, finds the guy at the end there in his own little epilogue, and he's like, oh my god, the sparks are real, or whatever. But anyway, but I like how Todd and Roxy were hanging out at the end there, and like working out and stuff. I thought, oh, my little gays, they're like hanging out, being friends. I think that's cool, it's nice. So yeah. Oh, and of course I derailed this all. I was trying to talk about knives and the little breakup thing, there. I thought that was really interesting because they have this little scene where he's like, yeah, I'm kind of with Ramona now, and I probably shouldn't have been dating you to begin with. And she kind of agrees with that. She's not really, like, heartbroken and, like, stalkery like she is in the movie. Which I thought was kind of a bad thing for her character. Because even in the books, I feel like she is that a little bit. But she kind of does her own things, too. And she becomes a character separate of Scott, and that's really nice, and I like that. And I feel like they gave Knives a little bit more chance to shine here too. She does shine a lot in the books. One of my main theories about who it was the whole time that like kidnapped Scott was like Knives' dad, because in the comics, in the books there, he actually is like a big character, and he has like the ninjas and stuff, and so I'm like, oh, maybe because there was like ninjas earlier on and stuff. It turned out it was just easier than that. It was just Scott from the future, which I should have seen coming, because he like goes to the future and then Scott goes back in time. Also, he puts a virtual boy on him to like relive their entire lives or whatever. I thought that was so funny. And it's like, it's virtual reality, and I'm just like, oh my god, it's the fucking virtual boy. That's hilarious. But there's a couple little funny lines like that. There was one time when Ramona's like has a realization or something, and it does the Metal Gear Solid like woo, like the exclamation mark thing. That was pretty funny. Lots of cool little stuff like that. I think the humor is still definitely there, overall, and I think that's good. I think it does retain a lot of Scott Pilgrim isms, I guess, and it is Edgar Wright doing it, and then of course like the whole cast is back, and they're doing a little bit different of portrayals, but it's a little bit different of a show, so I think that kind of, it really works out, and I liked it overall. I mean, I liked their performances. I liked, like I said, the animation, the music was good. Of course, there's so there's episode 2. This is why I started watching the show to begin with. Like I decided I finally needed to watch it, was because I saw the scene in episode 2 where Scott is dead, and then they're doing like a funeral for him, and then like, of course, in the movie, Emily Haynes from Metric sings Black Sheep, and then of course there's like Brie Larson, she's like playing the character of Andy Adams, but in this she comes in to sing I Will Remember You, or whatever that song is called. So but it's Emily Haynes again, and I'm like, it's Metric. Oh, nice, cool, I love it, because Metric's my favorite band, so I just thought that was really cool and interesting. Love that. I just love this because it's Scott Pilgrim, but it's like an expansion to the Scott Pilgrim universe, and it's like a different story and a different perspective, because you get to see all the perspectives of the evil X's. I think that's really dope. I think, yeah, I really like that, and I think, I think we're doing good, with this whole Scott Pilgrim thing, and I guess this was like season 1. I don't really know what they do with more like a season 2, but if they're gonna do that, like, yeah, hell yeah, I'd watch it. I'll watch whatever new story we're going for here, because this was already good, like, as long as everyone's on board again, I'm totally in. Okay, one thing I will say is, like, Stacy, Scott's sister, gets downplayed a lot. And they called one of the episodes, the one where he goes to the future, they called it Two Scott, Two Pilgrim, after, like, Fast and the Furious, which was a dumb name. I get it, I understand what's going on there, but the future with jetpacks? Come on! It's a line for the movie. It's probably in the books, too. It's so obvious. It's such an obvious thing. The future with jetpacks! That should have been the name of the episode. But anyway. That's a pet peeve of mine there. Come on, you should have done that. Stacy was downplayed a lot though, and so Anna Kendrick's not in there that much, which is understandable. But yeah, I just, I did really enjoy it overall, and I think it was good. I think it did good. It was a good show. It was a good expansion to Scott Pilgrim, and I very much appreciated that. Every Scott Pilgrim thing kind of has its own flair. The movie was an adaptation of the books, but it was different in its own right, and it was good in its own right. I think that's what I like about every Scott Pilgrim thing. It always adds something different, even if they're adapting the same story. The game even adapted, in its own way, and had the enemies and stuff, and, like, little references, and it had its own style, and there was extra little things in there. The books are kind of their own separate thing, too. They have a lot of differences from everything else, and then they have this show, which is, like, a whole different thing. So every time you get Scott Pilgrim, you always get at least something different, or, and I'm just really glad they didn't rehash the same thing again, because everything just seems to do that now. It's just a remake, They always just rehash the same story again and again and again, and Scott Pilgrim in an anime form, that would have been fine, but this is something completely different that still has a lot of the spirit of the original, and I appreciate that a lot, because it's an expansion to the world. It's not just another fucking adaptation of the same thing. That's beautiful. That's what everyone should be doing. Tell your story, but from, like, a weird, different perspective, or just go off the rails with it, I admire that so much more than let's just reboot the same thing again. Totally reboot it. It's just the same thing again and again. You didn't reboot anything. You just got shit on your face, like. Anyway, so, yeah, great. The music was great. The animation was great. The whole separate storyline with, like, everything going totally awry, totally side left field, it was great. The humor was great. I had a little bit of a problem with filler at some point, obviously right in the middle there, I feel, but I still didn't mind that all that much. I still was mostly having fun. The characters were great. Like I said, the animation was great. Everything about it was great, and I really enjoyed it. I'm a big Scott Pilgrim fan. I mean, it's my second favorite movie. This movie is of all time. I love the book series. I've been a big fan since, like, back in the day. And, yeah, if they keep doing more, okay, great. If not, this was great, and I love it. And this is an excellent addition to the Scott Pilgrim universe, and I'm always down to see more Scott Pilgrim. So yeah, until next time, this has been Emily with the stick around, subscribe to join the Bad Girl Coven, and maybe even more Scott Pilgrim at some point. I mean, I definitely have books to review, the movie to review at some point for sure, but yeah, Scott Pilgrim still going strong. I'm gonna give it like a 10 out of 10. I loved it, fucking A. So, until next time, Emily, never forget magic comes from the heart. Emily, out.